How y'all doing? In the early years of when I collected miniatures back in the early mid-90s, I got this. This is a nice little dragon here. We painted it in gold, and I didn't paint this myself. In fact, this is just spray painted. I wasn't seriously into painting at that time, just like the idea of collecting these miniatures. This is supposed to be a full-grown dragon, obviously in a very small scale than what you normally are used to. It's got a nice little hole on the bottom here. That's because it's supposed to be attached to a flying base, and it was created by Grenadier Miniatures. Grenadier Miniatures, for those of you who don't know, is one of the classic miniature lines from the early days of tabletop gaming of various kinds. You know, Ralparth, Ratham, Heartbreaker Miniatures, and Grenadier. Those are the four main ones that I'm familiar with. And this was not just a small company that came and went. This had a good 21-year run and had many good licensed products here. I mean, I'm seeing on miniaturearchive.com they had Ogre, the board game by Steve Jackson Games, but they also had Paranoia. That was a tabletop role-playing game. Shadowrun, Star Wars, even Traveler, Twilight 2000. They had Lord of the Rings, of course. You know, a lot of companies had Lord of the Rings, but they had their own. Dungeon board game, they made some of those. All sorts of wonderful Gamma World, Call of Cthulhu, Lord of the Rings, DC Heroes. So, and that's just their licensed products that they had at one point. They were also one of the early producers of Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in particular. Now, this miniature right here went to a board game that they produced back in 1993, and that is Dragon Lords. Picked this up at eBay here, and the thing about this is unopened, so we'll get to see the contents of this. It's not in mint condition. There's some little damage right here on the corner here. There's a nice little puncture one over here, but it's still in the cellophane there, so everything should be intact. So let's take a look at what we got here, and it should be interesting. So here we are, Dragon Lords, and you know, this is back in the days where fantasy art was pretty nice and basic, where, you know, something about dragons portrayed these days, and Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons, most, you know, there's some of them that look great, but there are some dragon illustrations that have dragons that are very large, they look rocky and overly spiky and things like that. But no, here, you know, this is back where dragons were dragons. Maybe a little too cartoonishly cute, but I'd rather have something like this on the low end and, you know, what's in the high end these days. But I'm digressing a bit. And I'm not saying this is on the perks of Larry Elmore, Keith Parkinson, or Jeff Easley and all of them, but this is nice, you know, nothing pretentious or anything. Let's take a look at the back here. The information right here, starting from the top part here, is Dragon Lords. Welcome to Dragon Lords, a game of fantastic battles between fierce dragons. In Dragon Lords, each player controls a dragon involved in an awesome aerial battle. Players moving their dragons about the maps, jockeying for best position from which to unleash their breath weapons upon their hapless opponents and hurling themselves headlong into mid-air mortal combat. And a picture shows what all that comes with here. Example, I'm sorry, my camera on my tripod won't show this, but hopefully I'll open it up and get a better view. And an illustration right here showing two examples of assembled and painted dragons. So on text above here reads as, I'm sorry about the glare, but here's what it reads. Dragon Lords is a fast-paced game sure to please any lover of fantasy. The 40-page rulebook covers how to fight with dragons of all sorts. It contains 12 ready-made dragons, plus easy-to-use rules on how to design up to 625 types of dragons, each of which can use any of the 5 different types of riders. The first part of the book features the introductory rules, which can be read and learned by the most inexperienced game in a single setting, but the fun doesn't stop there. The rulebook also contains a full set of advanced and optional rules that add even more complexity and realism to the game. Even most die-hard dragon fans will find what they want in Dragon Lords. Note, models do not come assembled or unpainted, but that's okay. Having the one dragon I showed you here and some of this is nowhere near as complicated as anything from Games Workshop, I can tell you. On the bottom here, it tells you everything that comes in this box set. The game contains a 40-page rulebook with 12 ready-made dragon play sheets, scenarios, game log and blank play sheets. 2 quick reference cards, a set of 70 altitude and combat counters, 6 metal dragons, riders, and plastic mounting stands, 4 dice, 6 full color map sheets overlaid by hexagonal grid. Alright, so that goes for the outside box. And let's take a look at what's inside. Okay, I've taken the plastic cellophane off because that's got to be a very uninteresting part there, and I don't know how to make that good. So let's open this box. This game is 29 years old at the time of making this video, so it should have everything we need right here. Okay, so here we have a little container here with all the metal parts of dragons. Dragons are simply the bodies and the wings, and you just glue them all together and then attach it to the bases. It's really as simple as that. And let's see, we have little ribbons here, and this where they tie around the lances, and it looks like a little sprue of 6 riders of different kinds. Very small. Don't know how. I never painted anything this small before, so hopefully when I get around to painting these, it'll look good. And it also comes with a 4 dice here. So dragons and riders right here. Let's see. Boy, this is old school text right here. PA residents must pay 6% tax. Oh, this is a little Grenadier model catalog list. You could probably look these up on Miniature Archives. Just Google Miniature Archives, and it should be the first one there. And you could look for any miniature company, and they'll tell you the what miniatures they have, what they have available, and doesn't have all the pictures of it, but it's a good resource to look into. Oh, look at this, a Grenadier catalog. Now this is good. This is old school stuff. Look at this. Oh, this alone would be nice. Just nice to have. There's some that looks like Dragon Lords, but these are just goblins flying gargoyles. Let's take a look further here. I'm going to assume in the end of this you might find Dragon Lords if they showed any of these at all. But if not, you'll find them in later on in other catalogs, which you can find online, as I've done earlier. But oh man, this is good classic old school stuff. As I said, they had a great run in 20 years. Both licensed and unlicensed. Check these guys out. So, don't see. Do they have Dragon Lords? I want to see dragons. Fantasy Lords box sets. And they may not have, may not have the Dragon Lords in this catalog, but this is 93, so you could probably check the 1994 on up. So let's go further. This must be the rule book. Yep. Yes. And let's take a look here. Illustration. See the 6 dragons and wonderful simple designs, and it looks like 6 wing types. Light, heavy, and average, and all that. I don't know how the rules do. And here's something. Now I've already looked into this through Board Game Geek, and many of you are looking at this part right now. You already know how this game is going to play. I mean, the fact that it's in a hex maps and all that, dots on different locations, part of the arc, damage allocation ones. Yes, this is written out like Battletech. So it looks as if you are a Battletech player and are very well with how this works, then you should play this game no problem. I don't know how complicated it is relative to, say, Battletech. Battletech can be pretty long because it counts for every situation. Let's see. Nice simple illustrations here. Yeah, this is one of those that if you grew up reading Dragonlance or anything of the likes, then this game should be right up your alley. Or if you play that old Dungeons & Dragons campaign, Council of Worms, I don't know who ever did, but this would be a great game to correlate with that. Look, nice and simple, ready-made dragon player character sheets, ready to go. So yes, I'll have to look into these rules sometime to see how they play out. And hex maps, and these looks like single, they seem to split up and fold in half, and they're one-sided, and it looks as if you can unfold them and put them in any which way. And get some forests and all that. I don't know if that's just simple scenery and stuff like that, but this would be very interesting. And think of something like this, you could get your old Battletech hexes as well. Let's see, we got a altitude markers here from very low to ground, high, medium, and engage. And let's see what we got here. A little quick reference sheets. Yes, Dragon Lord's reference, and it tells about the scene, initial play and all that. So, 2 of these, a little bit faded here, one compared to the other, but yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's all that comes in the box set here, and I'll say we'll have to check out a little bit further about this, see how this works out. Okay, so let's open this up and see what the dragons themselves look like. This package right here will have the dragons, the wings, and the stands. So yeah, here are the plastic stands about that. It's just pretty basic transparent one, nothing dynamic. You see a lot of current flying stands where they have a little curve from the base. But yeah, nothing new there. Let's take a look at the dragons themselves. So we have 6 dragons here. Let's take a look at this one. This one's the huge one. I got the instructions next by so I could tell which is which. After looking through the instructions, dragon, like Battletech, your dragon's abilities based on the size of its body, which indicates its weight, and the size of the wings, and that determines the maneuverability and such like that. So it's a combination of the two. So there's some customizations in that as you read the instruction book. This one right here, this is the small size. I know you can't tell too much of a difference, and I don't know, after reading the instructions, they don't seem to be that much of a difference when you custom make your dragon. Now this one we'll go next one here. This is the medium, and all right, yeah, pretty nice and straightforward. I mean, I love the classic design of dragons in this. And this one we got one of the tinies. There's 2 tinies in this one. Sorry, my camera does not have autofocus, so I'll be showing some before and after picture pictures, slideshow, and to give more details. All right, so then we have another tiny one. No, this is the large one. This is here the large body size. But again, I do like the classic look of dragons. So, I guess I said, so many dragons illustrated these days, especially when they get larger, they tend to have these overly scaly or rocky looking scales and all that. And I'm classic. I mean, let dragons look like basic dragons. Here we got the last one. This is also one of the tiny ones. Nice dynamic pose. Hole for the stand. Well, these will be quick painting, I'll probably say that. Now we get to the wings. 6 pairs of wings here, and let's see. This is one of the light wings, and of course the lighter lighter wing sizes, to smaller dragons or stuff like that. Or if you put the light wings on a large one, it affects its maneuverability more, and so forth. So you have to pick and choose pros and cons and everything. This is one, I guess, is the average wing size. So yeah, so I'll probably choose the right wings to the body size of the dragons, which looks best. Put the large wings on the larger ones. But according to the rules, you can customize your dragons to however. I think, like Battletech, they wanted to give some level of customization to your dragons depending on how you create it. So again, you choose the body size of the dragon given its own set of stats, and you choose the wing size, which affects its maneuverability between the two, and there's rules on how to do that. But the game itself also has pre-made dragons involved, so you can just pick one that suits you and go ahead and play. And and of course, it's pretty obvious. I don't think I need to do this, but you just sort of glue them on like so, and I'll do that in the future here, but for this video, I'll keep them unassembled. So, alright. So there's the dragons. These are a close-up look at the riders you could add to each of the dragons. There's 6 of them, because you'll have 6 dragons. And, and there's 5 types of fighters. So they gave you 2 Lancers, that's these 2 knight guys. And with those, they give you a piece of metal, like this. You cut in half and attaches it to the hole right here to serve as a lance. It obviously won't stick that far since you probably cut in half, or a little bit short if you want. In addition, there is a lancer, there's a crossbowman, and a regular archer, and of course a wizard. if there was, there's only 5 types, but they give you 2, gave you 6 for each dragon type. You'll have to buy the expansion packs, and in order to get more of them. But as you can see, they're very small, and a lot of them are sitting in a kneeling position or something like that. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. Each have their own special abilities. The Lancers here doesn't have a ranged combat, of course, but they give you close combat weaponry. The Archer, the Lancer, and the the crossbowman, they'll give you some range attacks. And the Wizard here is probably the most expensive one to attach to your dragon, because it has a selection of spells give you quite a number of advantage. So as I showed before, this is your basic sheet for any when you play a dragon in Dragon Lords. It has your name, your wing size, your breath weapon, your sharpness of your claws and teeth, maneuverability rating. This is very simple, straightforward stuff. It's not as complicated as it looks. This is the body, so for whenever you deal damage, you roll to see where you hit, where it's claws and teeth or a breath weapon. And if you roll on a certain basically, for those who don't know, haven't seen a game like this, when you attack your opponent, depending on, say, what direction you hit it, which hex it angles on, you correlate it to a chart, roll 2d6, and it tells you where it hits: head, tail, body, or which side of the wings. So, and you cut, and then you just fill in the dots. And if you go and they have these little halfway markers between, and once you go below that, that gives a penalty to that dragon there. Now, the shaded areas, those are for advanced rules and not the basic game. Basic game is pretty simple enough. But when you want to go advanced, the advanced rules are not that advanced. Not like Battletech. And I'll explain why in a second. So again, all the basic stuff is here, and it's pretty short. This is just a quick reference chart, which they gave in sheets when I open up the box. This right here tells the rider information. If you choose a dragon that has a rider, this is their information right here. What kind of it is an archer, lancer, wizard, what have you. Their minimum range and all that. If it has if it's a wizard, they will have magic points to spend on various spells. This right here is involves the advanced rules for optional combat tactics. You can make a close combat attack between your opponent, but you choose which is the attacker, which is the defender. You and your opponent will write secretly what combat tactic to use. You correlate on a chart to see the modifier and whether or not the tactic succeeds and how well they do it. So that's pretty much it. It's not as complicated as it looks. In fact, if anything, let's compare it to a basic. Let's compare it to a basic Battletech record sheet. Looks pretty similar. Same idea. You got your information on mecha, how fast it walks and runs or jumps it has to, its tonnage, all information, warrior data, has the weapons information here. This is its armor, where you shoot, again, you allocate to a chart where it hits the head, the torsos, the center torso, legs, what have you. If you hit from behind, this is the armor parts. You just fill in the dots depending on how much damage you do. Now, and if you get rid of the armor, you correlate down here to the internal structures, and this is where you do additional damage to internal parts. So this is where Battletech can get pretty slow because of all the things that can happen, especially with more players and more mechs on Battlefield. I personally played 3 games on tabletop, and much as I enjoyed it, and I understand it was. But don't fret. Dragon Lords is not nearly as complicated. It's more closer to the record sheet that you get in the beginner's box set. So it's same thing. It's just cut in half. And again, because it's the beginner's box set, it's not trying to do not trying to give you complicated, so there's no internal structure, you don't have to worry about the heat. It's just the mech information, the weapons, hit allocation charts, and where the armor is. And if the armor goes down, there goes the part. The idea is to get used to the basic stuff like movement, modifiers, and shooting and hitting, and then you go to the basic game to go further. Dragon Lords, I would say, based on reading the rules and seeing this, it's like this. And even when you go to the advanced rules, it's just a little bit further, but not quite as complicated as Battletech can be. Of course, to me, an interesting part about this is not only does Dragon Lords come with miniatures that you put together, 6 of them, and it has pre-made character sheets in the back. They're shortened like this. And you could choose any one of these to play up front, but you can also customize your own build through this dragon design. Now, this is not uncommon in games like this, although the point systems are around tens instead of hundreds or thousands of points, like you say Battletech. You could probably choose between, and it kind of suggests that I've used 12 or 15 development points if you're going to build a dragon there, depending if you're going basic game or advanced rules. And basically what you do is you could choose which body size, from very light to very heavy, from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wing size from tiny to huge, 1 to 5. Breath weapons, 1 to 5 right here. The breath weapons are cold, lightning, flame, ice, and magma. I would have chosen acid instead of magma there, but that's just me. Tooth and claw sharpness, you got from blunt to razor, again 1 through 5, and you have your choice of riders 1 through 5, and point costs. And of course wizards have the spells that are giving them a heavy advantage. And of course by choosing these, that dictates how well on the next chart what your abilities lie. So by mix and match various body sizes with wings, so what if you had a very huge body size with tiny wings? That gives it a sort of the I rating, which is the lowest, and that means they'll have a minimum and maximum speeds, which you can correlate on these charts. But also, when you have despite the number of points that may give you, it costs more to do your turnings from 60 degrees to 120 and all 80, as opposed to the A grade, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3. So I kind of like that customization about that. Lightning, from breath weapons, from cold to magma, it ranges from 2d6 to 4d6, and your tooth and claw sharpness goes from 2d6 to 4d6 depending on how sharp they are. And by choosing the body size, that tells you how many points of health that they have. Yeah, it's pretty simple, straightforward. So it is very nice like that. Now Battletech is much more in depth. You have a whole slew of different weapons. It still goes on the same weight class system, but it gets more complex and in depth. So yeah, that's just the concept of this is very neat. But I'll explain later why something like this didn't build on as Battletech did. Unfortunately, the catalog that came with the box set doesn't show all the selection of the dragons that they will eventually produce for this game, due to the fact they haven't been released out yet. It won't be till the 1994 Grenadier catalog that shows all the dragons that they made available. As you can see, there's quite a selection here, and again, the wonderful basic designs that we're familiar with in the classic role-playing games, particularly D&D. You got your blues, your blacks, your golds, and what have you, even some odd ones like your jade, rubies, iron, and things like that. A two-headed dragon, even an undead dragon, that'd be nice to have. And even there's a couple of them you can see on the ground level. And while in the basic game, it all takes place in flight, when you go to advanced rules, there is being on the ground and the rules on how to land, take off, and how to fight in that position. So that's where those come in. You even have additional riders that go with them, in case you want to add more to that. Okay, so there's Dragon Lords. Very nice game, interesting premise. Pretty simple, straightforward. You're flying around as dragons, attacking each other through the air. For those of you who grew up reading Dragonlance, or who played the NES game, or the PC game of Dragon Strike, or or if you're one of the few people that know about Counts of Worms, this is a great companion to go with that, or to those who like that theme. So why did it take off beyond first few years? Well, Battletech has gone on from the late 80s up until now. In fact, Battletech has even gone through a renaissance lately. Well, besides the fact that Grenadier is no longer in existence, and the miniatures are now owned by Merliton, based in Italy, which is not the game probably did catch on beyond a few years, and I don't think Merliton is interested in trying to find the molds, if it still has them, to make these miniatures again. It has Dragon Lords reading the basic game doesn't have much of extended lore. Battletech is very, very extensive in its lore. You can find YouTube channels explaining that. I mean, Black Pants Legion being one of the most famous, but there's a few other channels. The lore not only explains the background, the story of how humanity got into this future. It tells about how it went to space. It goes to the different eras, and the history of these eras gives you themes of what to play with. It has the lore can tell you, the lore details all the mechs, what their loadouts are, and even the different eras. It tells you which mechs you could use and how they are configured. There's also not only the inner sphere where you start off and go back that far, but you also go to the clans. They bring in their own mechs, and they have their own lore as well. It's so extensive that when you make up your game, you can choose which faction you're going to. You give yourself a different customizable mechs that fit within that theme. You have different paint styles that to fit how you want it. And it's so far it's as far as deep as you want. And in fact, it even goes beyond the mechs. You can, in addition to the battle mechs, which is the core of its game, you can expand it to tanks, hovercrafts, helicopters, jets, ships on the ocean, even spacecraft. You can have space battles in here, and Ironwind Metals do present that. So you can make it full-scale war if you so wanted to. Dragon Lords, you're a dragon flying around, you breathing your breath weapon or getting close combat and attacking them. Not much to go there. Sure, you could probably implement this in the way Battletech role-playing game did, where in the tabletop role-playing game, not the miniature game, but the tabletop role-playing game of Battletech, you can play that, and if you want to, you can you can get in a scenario where mechs are involved and go straight to the tabletop Battletech miniature game, and you play that out, and that affects how your future scenarios go when you go back. You could do that, but how many scenarios in your typical role-playing session involves aerial combat, unless that's your setting? Not much. So it's hard to really expand that through there. So can this game be resurrected? It's not impossible, but you gotta think this through, not just make a new version of this. You have to see if there's a market there, and then you have to see and maybe the rules are either too simple or too complex, so you may make your own rules. Heck, Battletech even has Alpha Strike, which doesn't use the typical rules. It uses cards and straight measuring, and much simpler way to play. Great for introducing to kids that don't have to be bogged down with all the detail. You have to make it a typical Battletech game. So there's a possibility of that. You could, resurrect this and have it to where it's hex based, or if you want, take away the hex and make your own version of Alpha Strike rules where you don't need the hexes at all, just basic measurements and how you fly and do your attacks. Then you can also, when you make this, you can also market it to where it's you had the base game you can play by itself, but market it to where it can be integrated into role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, etc. While limited scenarios, as I said, it's a good way to expand it on that area. Heck, Mr. Welch, who just came out with a free player's handbook from Astara, a 5th edition, there are scenarios where you can have aerial combat as a regular thing. There's a huge giant airship that had practically a flying city going around based on old technology. And this is where you can probably take a new version of Dragon Lords and extend it to other forms of aerial combat outside of dragons. So like Battletech, which is centered on mechs, and you just extend it through tanks and all other vehicles to go with it. You can probably make a new version of Dragon Lords on this scale and add in things like rocks, not actual rocks as in the giant birds of Arabian lore, jinns, elementals, manticores, chimeras, griffins, of course, airships. So you can expand it through that in aerial combat. But if you did, don't expect it to have a lasting power relative to Battletech. Something that could come and go, and if you got a good strong fan base behind it, and if you make this by itself and extend it to other games, it might last a little bit. Okay, so here's the thing. These miniatures are very hard to find. You try eBaying Dragon Lords, Grenadier Dragon Lords. Most of what you'll find are the larger scale dragons that are on the 28mm scale. That's what you're going to mostly find. I got lucky finding this through eBay. I'm going to say I spent a couple $100 on it because just to get the whole thing and what the game is like. And I'm pretty satisfied with it. I'll eventually put the miniatures together, and I will and paint them up, and I'll show that in a future video, whenever that is. I got a whole back pile. I'm painting Warcry, and I got my basic Reaper, and even a couple of old-fashioned Grenadiers and stuff like that. And I got my Battletech, which I did. So probably going to do all that first, whenever that lasts. But when I do, I'll do my typical slideshow as always. So, but this is hard to find, and suppose you don't want to play the game, you want the dragons, that's even harder to find. At the time I made this video, outside the large dragons, I've only found one to the board game, and that was the Hydra. So maybe but it's eBay, you know, hopefully in time you can find more. You just have to go slog through a whole lot of Dragon Lord large scale miniatures before you find anything related to the board game. So what you can't, if you're a person that can sculpt miniatures through 3D files, this may be your opportunity. I just showed a couple of pictures from the catalog showing the designs of the other dragons. Not the best quality, but maybe that's a starting point. In addition, at the end of this video, I'm going to show a slideshow of each of the dragons unassembled, show both sides of what they look like, and I'll put a little coin and a ruler there to give you a sense of scale. Maybe that can also, I don't know if this will work, but hopefully it does. You can use that as a reference point to make your own STL files and resurrect these. You may have to tweak it a little bit. I mean, these are out of print miniatures, and if you can find HeroQuest on Thingiverse, HeroQuest miniatures, same scale, exactly the same as the original board game, just print them up in an STL file for resin printers. Maybe you could do this with this. In addition, you may go further on that scale, make different dragon designs for the new designs. I'm not too big on the large scale and rocky look of dragons, but you may be, and there may be maybe those who may be into that. It could also be an opportunity to do your own. Again, for small ones like the other monsters like griffins and airships and stuff like that to go with it. Even go science fiction fantasy. Are any of you familiar with Panzer Dragoon? Think about that for a second. So, I'm making this video because it's a game that hardly anybody knows. I've looked around on the internet and there's a few forums that are talking about it. Most people aren't even aware of it, but they seem to remember it. So this is my opportunity to get this out there and maybe introduce you to, if not the game itself, but introduce you to the concept where it could be resurrected in a new form. Not necessarily in Dragon Lords. You probably have to give it another title there because it's not really original and may have to do with copyright issues. So look out for that. But if you could do HeroQuest and from there and Dungeons & Dragons and have all these different dungeon crawlers that are the same, but their own different, unique, and even same mechanics. You could probably do a resurrection of this if you're so interested. So I'm bringing this out there. Maybe there's a market for this of hex-based battles with small-scale flying monsters attacking each other. Sometimes we don't want, some people want a large amount of rules for immersion purposes like Battletech, but sometimes quick and easy is just as fun. And with other games like Star Wars Armada and past games like Battlefleet Gothic with using ships and stuff like that, flying dragons in fantasy we don't have too much of. So here's another go. And again, I'll put the slideshow of the miniatures so you can have reference and maybe you can build on that. And if by any chance you make them, let me know and hope and maybe even download them and print them myself. Thank you all for watching. You have a nice day.